Hello, happy Friday, everyone. I am Julie Hirschberg, the owner of Reactive Physical Therapy and Wellness, and happy to join you this Friday for another Facebook Live. And we have a lot happening here at Reactive this month. October is a really big month. Last weekend, we did a weekend course for PTs and OTs across the globe, actually, which was awesome. I love our profession. I love working with people who are as passionate as I am. And we hosted our course fully online. So that's the first time we've done that for a weekend course. And it was on cultivating central nervous system connectivity, a guide to assessment and treatment in functional movement disorders, CRPS, and dystonia. And really, three of my favorite different diagnoses to work with. So we had the course over the weekend, and basically all week I've been so excited to do things. I mean, I woke up Monday morning with just like overflowing ideas, a lot of excitement, and a lot of just so much that I learned from what other people brought. So in the course, we actually had people submit cases and bring their own cases, and we got to work through them together, which is such a great experience and a great way to learn. I just love it. So today I just wanted to share it with you. So the course is recorded. Of course, you can grab the recording of it now. All of our resources are there. But we just learned so much that I wanted to share a little bit today. And then we're hosting a free webinar tomorrow with a highlight reel. So Brittany, Kim, and I just kind of today put together that highlight reel. So we're going to go through just a little bit of the diagnosis, the assessment, so that you're not missing things in the assessment, and then treatment. So going through a little bit of motor control, graded motor imagery, sensory training, autonomic, and put those pieces together. So we've got a highlight reel tomorrow. It's free. So totally free, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. I'll pop a link in here and you can sign up. So, but today I wanted to talk very specifically about a couple of things because I've been using these so much this week. So I want to talk about the framework that we use for cultivating central nervous system connectivity. A big topic that we've been talking about and came up a lot in the course is our autonomic nervous system, our stress tolerance, and how we discuss this with people and work through it in intervention, and specifically ways that we might explore optimizing neuroplasticity. This is such a big hot topic right now. I think because we're in a pandemic. So we're going to talk about those three today, and I want to start with this framework. So I've got printouts here. You know me, I like love having an actual paper version of things, even though I'm trying to save the world and not cut down trees. But we created a workbook for this course for the people that we work with. This is the version of it for people with functional movement disorders, and this has our framework. So when we talk about cultivating central nervous system connectivity, I want to talk about how we would approach this and use this gardening metaphor analogy as our framework. So some of the things that are really important, I'm going to actually start at the top and work to the bottom because we're going to go into neuroplasticity optimization and the autonomic nervous system. So starting at the top, when we think about cultivating central nervous system connectivity, we're really talking about this process of how do we facilitate a very positive neuroplasticity, positive reconnection, and how might we help undo some of the negative neuroplasticity. So we set up an environment where there's pruning taking place. So these are our little pruning shears over there, right? So we set up the environment for positive feedback on movement, for example. We show the person that they have the capacity for automatic movements. It's a big piece of what we do in the training for functional movement disorders. What from a watering perspective, so that's over here. From a watering perspective, we look to see where there might be a sensory deficit or impairment, and then provide just the right amount of input. So whether that's vestibular, visual, somatosensation, proprioceptive, vibration, all of those things become inputs, and we have to help the person grade just the right amount. So those are our big reconnection pieces. Another piece of our framework that we cannot ignore is that there may be, this is our little compost bin, there may be some underlying physical limitations, and we want to address those. So we might help the person build resources. So maybe there's strength or a flexibility issue or nerve mobility. Nerve mobility came up a lot, by the way, in our weekend course. We talked a little bit about nerve dynamics and how we might assess and include those in treating. So that's our compost, is building some of that capacity with the person. And then, so in our framework, reconnection, big piece. Addressing underlying physical limitations, big piece. And so the other pieces are what we talked a lot about in the course is, what about the soil and the weather? Because right now, in the midst of the pandemic, the soil and the weather affecting our nervous system is really huge. So the weather we think about is the environment, the context that we're in. Maybe it's family, maybe it's work, maybe it's in a larger world environment where there is injustice and racism. Maybe it is a political climate that's affecting us. Maybe it is our beliefs and our understanding of the diagnosis even. So all of those pieces come into play. And when we talk about neuroplasticity optimization, that's a huge part. What we know in the literature in dystonia, in functional movement disorders, and in CRPS is the having the correct diagnosis, the belief and confidence in the diagnosis is a huge part of paving the way for positive neuroplasticity. So that's one piece of our neuroplasticity optimization. The next is the soil. So if you go back, like when my kids are studying these things, they're learning the different layers of soil. So we have different layers of soil that we can look at and address for optimizing neuroplasticity. So things like systemic health. We had an amazing conversation with Laura Ettinger, who is a neurologist that specializes in CRPS. We had an amazing conversation about immune health. We talked about MCAS, for example, as an underlying issue in some of the cases of CRPS. And that needs to be treated, right? So that changes the soil composition. We talked about cardiac factors, nutrition factors as part of the soil, addressing sleep, because we know in the functional movement disorders world, sleep deprivation can actually be a predisposing factor to having the functional neurologic disorder. And then we talked about fitness, and we talked about autonomic dysfunction and how we might increase a person's tolerance for exertion and activity. So how we might test that. So like in a person post-concussion, how we might do a Buffalo concussion treadmill test, right? So that we can grade their activity and their tolerance without symptoms. And then finally, and this is the last piece I want to talk about, is the sense of safety and stress arousal. So one of the layers of the soil, and this is my new favorite, is is this window and of tolerance. This comes out of the work from Dr. Porges. Dana Elizabeth Stanley is another one. I read her book that's actually called Widen the Window in the polyvagal theory. So we talked about this in our course, and it was a real hot topic because not just the people we work with, but ourselves, we're feeling a little less safe in our world. And what we can see, so especially in a functional neurologic disorder, we can see that somebody may be in more of a sympathetic fight or flight state where there's a lot of panic, there's fear, there's worries, there's frustration. Some of that's brought on by even just the medical management, the multiple doctors people have been through. So that's one aspect. In the polyvagal theory, they talk about the dorsal vagal state and the ventral vagal state as well. So that dorsal vagal state is that state of freeze, collapse, immobility, feeling really hopeless, numbness, shut down. And so we can see this specifically in some of the functional neurologic disorder symptoms, right? So I actually have people that may go between states of being paralyzed and numb and no sensation to states of dystonia and tremor and overflow. So they may be going between these two states. And the window of feeling very safe and secure, that ventral vagal state right here in the middle, where the person can feel grounded and mindful and curious and joyful and in the moment, in the present, that window might be very narrow. And that is the window where a person with a functional movement disorder, for example, will have the ability to normalize their attention, have a sense of self-agency, and have control of their movements. So if that's the substrate that we need, if that's the soil that we need, then as physical therapists, as occupational therapists, we need to help explore ways to widen the window, to improve, to raise the threshold would be another way to say it, of safety. And this correlates really nicely if you've ever looked at some of the work from the NOI group, Laura Mosley, David Butler, and the protectometer. And there are the danger in me and the safety in me pieces. It's very similar. We've just broadened that with the polyvagal theory, and in particular making it very specific to neurologic disorders. We're going to work to widen and help the person find resources to widen the window so that they have more safety and security. So this is something I'm using this piece a lot with people and just asking the question, like, how wide is your window right now? And that's actually how we put it at the top. How wide is your window? And what are the things that you know that you can do to feel more safe and secure in your nervous system? And people bring up great things. They'll say, I know yoga really helps me. I know when I get outside. I know if I pay attention to my breath. I know if I'm around people that I love and are very encouraging of me. Those are all things that widen the window. And then we work to explore functionally, physically, how can we help get more time in those activities so that the window is wider, because when the window is wider, we can set down new pathways and have positive neuroplasticity. So we discussed this a lot in the weekend course, and I think that was one of the key takeaways for me, is how person specific this is and how important this is. You know, we could do all the sensory training in the world, all the motor control, implement the optimal theory, do all these great techniques and ideas. But if the nervous system is in a sympathetic fight or flight or in a freeze, we're not going anywhere. So we can't ignore it, and let's build our skills to help a person discover some of those things so that we can set up the soil for positive neuroplasticity. that was a huge takeaway of the course. And frankly, not stuff that I learned in school. This has been part of my own journey and exploration for myself, but also in working with people with neurologic disorders where neuroplasticity has gone awry. So, like in the case of dystonia or functional disorders or CRPS. So I wanted to share that with you. I'm so very passionate about it at the moment because I think it's so important. So you can join us tomorrow in our webinar. So this is our encore webinar. I'll put a link here in the chat if I can. You can sign up for that and join us tomorrow, Saturday, 9 a.m. And if you can't join us live, you can join us. You can get the recording. We always record all of this. All of our recordings are freely available for you. And I actually have we've done a lot of free webinars, which I'm very proud of. And we put them all on one page so they're easily accessible. So I'll pull that link over into here as well, because you can catch any of our webinars and the handouts, etc., and kind of get some ideas, get going on the journey, especially with complex cases. So you can join us live tomorrow. You can catch any of our recorded webinars. And next week, we have a very special webinar. It's Saturday, October 24th, 9 o'clock again. And this very special webinar is with Beth Fisher. And we're going to talk about those unrelenting misperceptions of spasticity. She's going to revisit a awesome CSM talk from a few years ago. And so you don't want to miss that. So you can sign up for that on our webinars page as well. And we'll email you the information to be able to join us live for that. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will catch you tomorrow maybe or next week. Have a great weekend.